Hello everybody and welcome to another UFC, I don't even know what you call this, like breakdown video, right? Little video where you listen to some crazy Welsh guy talk bollocks about cage fighting for a couple of hours. Anyway, we are back with that, boys. Kicking things off with a jingle this week because as the channel grows, well, we got to get a jingle situation going, right? So for now, I'm the jingle dude. I'll just sing. That's the new intro. We're going to do some singing, boys. Maybe if it keeps growing, I'll pay someone to do a jingle for me because I'm well aware, even though Wales is the Sleepy Land of song, I am probably not the best person for the job to give you singing intros. But as we talk about the channel growing, boys, as we talk about the need for jingles and all kinds of professional shit as we get bigger, please, on that note, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button right now. And also, if you appreciate these videos, if you want me to keep putting these videos out into the universe, please hit the like button. And I am very sorry. I want to start on this note because I am feeling a little bit guilty. I want to say I am very sorry for not bringing you guys much content this week. You probably already know why. Like it kind of gets like this for me some weeks. On weeks where we have multiple major MMA events, my schedule is absolute chaos, boys. I am deep down the rabbit hole of researching all these fights, so I don't have as much time as I would like to bring you this kind of content. Obviously, this week we've got a massive UFC card in Auckland, as well as 3 Bellator events. It's just not manageable, boys. It's so hard to get through all these fights. So yeah, the majority of my time is being taken up by the fight research. Of course, we've got Bellator 239 on Friday night. Then we've got Bellator Europe and Bellator 240 on Saturday night, and the UFC and the boxing. It's a lot for just one tiny little dude in Wales to handle, boys. So sorry I haven't brought you much content this week. I am also very sorry that because of all these fucking Bellator events, I'm not going to be able to do the Fun Bets live stream on Saturday, which does upset me a bit because that's like my favourite piece of content that I put out all week. I actually look forward to it. I actually look forward to like chopping it up with you guys in the live streams, trying to dig for these like crazy parlays and fun prop bets. So I am gutted that I'm not going to have time to do that this week, but it's just impossible with so many fights to get through. But boys, if you do like to get balls deep in fights, if you want to really go deep down the rabbit hole of all these fights with me that I still have to research, then head on over to my website, roll your mouse over the community tab, click the live streams button, and every single day, you see right here, every single day, boys, I am in the trenches researching MMA. I live stream, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours a day on my website. And I know it's not for everyone. You look through, look through all the work that I've been doing this week. We go crazy deep on these fights. We've got a 3.5 hour video on the Kara France versus Nam fight, 2 hours on Aguilar Tukhugov here. We've got fucking an hour on Riddell Mustafaev, and it just goes on and on and on. So it's not for everyone, boys. I understand this balls deep, long form content is not for everyone, but if you are up for that kind of shit, if you do want to get balls deep in these MMA fights with me this weekend, I'll literally be streaming every single second from now until the time the fights take place on Saturday. And with that being said, boys, I am trying to do something cool for you this week. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, but I'm going to try and do something pretty cool for the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight. It's not what you think. It's not a regular breakdown video or anything like that. It's going to be way better. But whether or not I'm able to put that out for you will depend on what time the UFC and Bellator fights end this weekend. If they end before the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight, keep an eye on YouTube, Twitch and Mixer, because I've got something cool as fuck coming. And if I can't do it this weekend, we'll do it for the next big boxing fight. So hang in there, boys. I got something super sexy coming. You're gonna love it. I just can't promise you it's coming in case Bellator runs over or UFC runs over into when the Wilder and Fury fight is on. So anyway, boys, hit the like button if you like these videos, subscribe if you haven't already, and now I do want to talk a little bit about last week. So pre-fight betting last week for me was a mixed bag. We put the live stream out, I think it was like last Tuesday or something, where we were saying, at the current odds, Tim Means looks like a great bet. Well, he was looking like a great bet until he wasn't. I think like a second before Dr. Rodriguez dropped him with that right hand. He was like a 1.16 favourite in live betting, but obviously only takes one shot, man, and Tim Means was in big trouble when that shot landed. Also had a decent sized bet on Merab Dvalishvili, which put you know, a pretty big dent in that Tim Means loss, so it wasn't so bad. Small loss pre-fight betting. It was very, very mediocre overall, you know what I mean, taking a small loss. Now, I don't usually talk about live betting on this channel because to me it feels a little bit shitty for me to be like, oh well, I told you, all of you guys, to bet on Means, but you know what I mean, actually I did pretty good and made some money because of all the bets I placed that you guys didn't get in on. I never usually talk about live betting. I think it's a bit, I just don't like talking about it, man, 'cause I feel like you guys are here for the pre-fight content, you guys are here for the breakdowns, and if I can't help you with the live betting, then what's the point of me even talking about it? But I will say, last weekend was spectacular for live betting. It was one of the best events for live betting on the UFC in a long time, and it was good, man. I went 3-0 on live bets. Very, very handsome profit overall. It was 4-1 for the weekend. I also try and go a lot bigger on live bets than I do pre-fight bets. So it was good shit, man. It was a good weekend. I know it feels a bit crazy because I'm saying like bet Means and he loses and then it's all negative vibes, but last weekend was pretty good for me, do you know what I mean? So I can't complain. But on that note, this is a long-winded way of me going about saying something that I do want to talk a little bit about, because whenever I make a loss on pre-fight bets, like, people are just fucking, they take shit so seriously, do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much negativity out there, man. And I dread Sundays after I recommend a bet to you guys that doesn't win, because the Sunday after the event is horrible. I get like nasty emails, nasty DMs, you know, people creating fake accounts online to troll me, people creating fake accounts come into my public chat room that anyone can go to, is completely free, to cause me problems, and just kind of like wind people up and create a bad atmosphere in there. I get this all the time, and I dread Sundays because it gets particularly bad if ever I give a bet out on YouTube that loses. So I'm one of these guys, man, that I fucking hate negativity. I think it's just so sad when people just go around just spreading negativity in the world and just causing unhappiness, basically. So whenever I'm getting like hammered with negativity online, there's always that saying in it that if you're not like coming up with a solution, you're a part of the problem. So what I always like to do, like, I'm a small fish in a very, very big pond. Like, I've got a small audience. No one really cares about my opinion. No one really cares about me in this universe, right? I'm small fry. But I always think, man, if I get hammered with all this abuse, like the day after I give out a losing bet to people, imagine how bad it must be for the fighters. Like, they must get it 10 times worse. And it's not so bad for me because, say I take a loss on the weekend, it's not so bad, man. I can get back to work Monday, jump into researching these fights, dust myself off, get back to work, and then there's always an event the next week where you can get back on the horse, get back on profit, turn things around, and everything's hunky-dory again. But for fighters, it's so much more difficult, man, because they may only fight once or twice a year, and if they, you know, take a loss in their last fight, they might have to just face shit from people for like 3 months, 6 months, or even a year. And it ain't nice, man. I can tell you, it ain't nice just taking it on a real small level like I do in just a matter of days, let alone these fighters that must deal with it for months. So what I like to do to like counteract the negativity, if I'm getting negativity online, I'm like, do you know what I'm going to do, man? I'm going to DM fighters and I'm going to say something nice to them, man, maybe brighten up their day. So I do it quite often. If I'm having a particularly bad day, I will look at like the fighters that lost on the previous event and I'll slide into the DMs and be like, do you know what, dude, chin up, man, you got unlucky, you did this great, you did that great, like, you're gonna be okay, man, you're a beast, chin up, you're gonna bounce back, it's all good, bro. Don't let the bastards grind you down, right? So this weekend, I was like, do you know what, man? A lot of people giving me shit over telling him to bet Tim Means and he lost. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go on to Tim Means' profile and I'll just be like, hey, Tim, do you know what I mean, dude? I know you really wanted that win bad. I know that it was in your hometown. You wanted it in front of your family and your friends and your community, and everyone was out to support you. It was a big deal for you. You came up short, dude, but you're a beast. You will be back. You're an incredible fighter. Yeah. Just wanted to say this to him. And then I came onto his profile and I saw this fucking pond life piece of scum bastard called Bradley Richards, who's basically like, Tim Means posted after the fight that you probably noticed Tim Means' output drop off in round 1. It's because he blew his knee out in round 1, and then obviously he got knocked down towards the end of round 1. So Tim Means has literally blown his knee out. He has fucking probably got a concussion from being knocked out, or even fucking dinged about 3 or 4 times from another professional fighter, Rodriguez. He's lost in his hometown, right, in front of all his family, his friends, his community. He was trying to fight to pay he was trying to dedicate this fight and pay tribute to some of his friends that were killed in a car accident, so he didn't get the opportunity to go on the mic and pay tribute to them. He literally probably lost tens of thousands of dollars in his win bonus. On top of that, you know, God knows how long he'll be out now if he blew his knee out. And you have this cock on Sunday think it's a good idea to tell this professional fighter, this guy that has the balls to go out there in the cage and fight in his underwear for millions, in front of millions of people, that you cost me £170. Like, you absolute prick. Like, guys, just please, whatever you do in life, don't be fucking Bradley Richards. What a pathetic waste of oxygen. And, like, these people, man, like Bradley Richards, just go around spreading negativity. Like, I saw that and I was like, fucking hell, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, Tim Means has had a real rough night Saturday night, and he has to wake up to some cock telling him that he cost him £170. It's a joke. And then you go on this guy's profile and it's just negative message after negative message. Negative. You know, fuck off, Levy. Boris is a nonce. Like, take it, just basically negative message after negative message after negative message. And it's like, can't we just fucking get rid of these jokers? So here's a little bit of a rant, boys, which I haven't done in a long time. I stopped ranting and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to focus on the fights and the breakdowns and give you guys the shorter, concise videos that I know you like. But since this isn't a card that is particularly good, most people are focused on the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight, I thought, fuck it, I will have a little bit of a rant for once, because things like that bother me. When I see a fighter go out there, put everything on the line for our entertainment and get knocked out, what I don't like to see is pricks making fun of them the next day. So that is it, boys, rant over. And with that being said, it is now time to get into the first fight that I want to talk about in today's video, which is Angela Hill against Loma Lookboonmee, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. What I want to do for this fight, I'm not sure how long I'm going to be talking about this one, but I will leave a video of one of Lookboonmee's fights in the background. And on that note, boys, on that note, I've just said about how I hate people that are being cocks online, and I'm very conscious of the fact that I might say something that is a little bit nasty here, but I don't think this is a female. I'm not sure this is a female, man, that Lookboonmee is fighting. Like, if you look at, like, the bone structure, the chest, the legs, this doesn't look like a female. And I actually was checking this out last night when we researched it. The fighter's name is Suwanen Bunson, and even in this picture, this just doesn't look like a female. Like, I'm not too sure what's going on. Let me know what you think in the comments, boys, if you think this is a female or not. But the way that she moves and stuff, this fight's a little bit weird to me. Is this one of these crazy freak show fights where they put like a man against a woman? I'm not so sure, but this one's a little bit strange to me. Anyway, there's a lot of hype behind Lookboonmee coming into this fight, who is in the Tiger Muay Thai gear, the black and the orange, and I am not too sure why, if I'm honest, because she is predominantly a Muay Thai practitioner. She's got a very traditional Muay Thai base, and because of that, she has a lot of holes in her game. Now, you would expect that because she's only 24 years old and she's going to have a lot to work on. But I do think Lookboonmee is going to have a lot of issues in the UFC, because even the things that she does great aren't particularly effective, and this is a tough fight for her against Angela Hill. I want to come out straight away and say that this is a very good stylistic matchup for Angela Hill, and I really do think Angela Hill is going to work, just so long as she fights smart. So some of the problems with Lookboonmee, I mean, I was just going to show you their Instagram profiles where you can see Angela Hill train at Alliance MMA. Obviously she's trained there for a long time. Loma training at Tiger Muay Thai, which is actually something we need to touch on very briefly. Loma's only 24 years old. She does train at Tiger Muay Thai. Tiger Muay Thai, I've actually rebranded now to Tiger Muay Thai and MMA. They're one of the best MMA gyms in the world. And if you train there, you are likely to be making big improvements from fight to fight, especially if Lookboonmee is a sponge who can absorb all the information. She is likely to be improving at a rapid rate, so that adds a little bit of danger to this bet if you do want to bet on Lookboonmee, because we don't really, if you do want to bet on Angela Hills, we don't really know what version of Lookboonmee we're going to see this weekend. Tough to be too harsh on her over her performance against Alexandra Albu, because obviously that was a UFC debut. Fighters never look their best in the UFC debut. So what I would say about this fight is it's a good stylistic matchup, because Angela Hill and Lookboonmee, they're both primarily Muay Thai based fighters, whereas over the years Angela Hill has been able to develop more of a complete mixed martial arts game, whereas Lookboonmee is very, very still a one-dimensional Muay Thai fighter that hasn't evolved into a full MMA fighter yet, which means if Angela Hill fights smart here, this should be an easy night's work. So if we talk about some of the things that Loma does well, so what Loma does well, she has excellent leg kicks. She's very, very strong in the clinch. Her knees in the clinch are nasty as fuck. She really digs that knee into the body and can do a lot of damage with it. And that is a potential risk factor in this fight, because with Angela Hill having a base in Muay Thai, she also likes to fight in the clinch. But we do know that Angela Hill tends to slow down as the fight goes on. Also, on top of that, Angela Hill is taking this fight on short notice, and she's got a 15-hour flight from California to Auckland. And if ever you have been on a long-haul flight, you'll know that jet lag is a motherfucker. I went to Singapore last August, and I'm not even joking, boys. 2-3 weeks later, I still didn't feel like myself. I was all fucked up. So I know that flight from the UK to Singapore is a bit longer than the flight from California to Auckland, but 15 hours on a plane, doesn't matter if you're in business class or whatever, is still a motherfucker. So that's one thing to bear in mind as well. And Angela Hill did travel out to Auckland quite late. I think she only left on I think she recorded the Joe Rogan podcast on Sunday, or actually Monday this week, which means she's probably only arrived in Auckland Tuesday night, Wednesday, which isn't really a lot of time for her body to recover. And with Angela Hill slowing down as the fight goes on, if Loma can bait her into an exchange in the clinch, dig those hard knees into the body, that could accelerate the rate at which Angela Hill slows down. So that is a bit of a red flag. But aside from that, there's not too much here that Loma could do to cause Angela Hill a problem. Yes, Loma's got very, very fast, technical, snappy leg kicks, but her boxing isn't great. You know, she's got tricky kicks, but boxing is an area where she could really struggle here. What you also see about Loma, because she's very, very undersized for the division, she's only 5'1" with a 62-inch reach, but the majority of her past fights have been in the atomweight division, right? So, really, her last fight against Albu was her only real fight at strawweight. And even though you look at the tail of the tape and you think, well, Angela Hill's 5'3" with a 64-inch reach, Loma is 5'1" with a 62-inch reach, and you're like, on paper, there's not that much of a size difference between both girls. If you actually look at their physicality in the cage, you'll see Lookboonmee's quite small, quite slight, whereas Angela Hill is quite big, quite physically imposing, quite muscular. You look at her arms, her back, her neck, and that really does show in their fights as well, because when Lookboonmee gets into an exchange with anyone in terms of exchanging punches, she just cannot hurt them. If you go and watch the fight against Monique Adrian Azevedo, when Monique and Lookboonmee came together and they exchanged, Lookboonmee would tag Azevedo, and it would not bother Azevedo at all. It wouldn't snap her head back, it wouldn't back her up, it wouldn't do any damage, and Lookboonmee was landing clean. And that's an area of this fight where she's really going to struggle against Hill, because one of the things that Hill does great is she fights very long. She's very good at using her length, the long jab, and also when she's throwing the hook, is super long and rangy as well. So this is one of those fights where, when you look at the odds on both these girls, you see Lookboonmee as a big underdog, which is currently around about 2.55, which is plus 155 for an implied probability of 39%. I can't bet Lookboonmee this weekend. I just don't see enough from her. I think if Hill shows up and fights smart, this is an easy fight for Hill. If we look at the odds on Hill, now, I don't really know what odds to put in here because they are improving. The hype is starting to have an impact on the odds. Money's starting to come in on Lookboonmee, which is improving the odds for Angela Hill, right? So if we just throw in average odds on Hill at the moment of around 1.53, we can see that that gives Hill an implied probability of 65%. So in order to get any, or in order to find value on Hill, you've got to give it around about a 70% chance of winning. And I'm not sure if you can. I haven't made my mind up on this one yet. I don't know whether I'm going to bet Hill or not. What I will say is this is a very good stylistic matchup for Hill. What I will also say is betting female fighters in this odds range gives me the heebie-jeebies. It is dangerous because we do know that female fighters do tend to be a little bit more inconsistent than male fighters. They have battles with periods and stuff, right, which occasionally out of the blue will make it very difficult for them to make weight. It's a huge issue with female fighters. They struggle. You never really know what's going on behind the scenes with them, you know, how they're going to be feeling on fight day. Also, Hill's step it up to take the fight on short notice. Hill's also been very, very active lately. She's fought so many times. Like, if you look at Angela Hill's record, in the last year, she has fought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the last year. It's crazy. Will that fatigue start to set in? The physical the physical fatigue, the mental fatigue, when will that start to present itself? Now, this is a very good stylistic matchup for Angela Hill. I'm not going to tell anyone that Angela Hill's a bad bet, but what I will say is capping female fighters in the 70% range, especially when they're doing a long haul flight, taking the fight on short notice. Have fought a bunch of times lately, and especially when they do tend to slow down as the fight goes on. It's tricky. It is tricky, man. If Angela Hill was coming on a full camp and everything, I would say go pull the trigger at 1.53, mate. But at these odds, it's tricky. It is tricky. It is always a risk to bet female fighters in this odds range because of how much more inconsistent they are. And the only final thing that I would say about this fight, which could be pure speculation, but what I do worry about is with Angela Hill being a fighter with a base in Muay Thai, sometimes, you know, when fighters are UFC veterans, they're really experienced and they fight like these newcomers like Lookboonmee, you know, Hill might think, you know what, this girl doesn't have anything for me. She doesn't deserve to be in there. I'm a former Invicta champion. I'm much more experienced than her. I've got a base in Muay Thai. I'm the superior Muay Thai fighter. I'm going to go out there and beat her in a Muay Thai match. I'm worried Hill might do that because Hill doesn't always fight to her strengths. And that could get her into trouble, especially if she starts mixing it up in the clinch with Lookboonmee. So I feel like Lookboonmee could beat the body up and cause Hill to slow down in the second round, which would be an issue because you don't want your money on a big favourite when they're slowing down in round 2, right? That's their value. So that's something else to be worried about. So haven't made my mind up on this one yet. It is a good fight for Hill. I just don't love the odds. I hope that makes sense. But you can make your own decision, man. I'm not going to hold your hand, not going to tell you what to do. Go take a look at some of their past fights and decide for yourself. But it is a good stylistic matchup for Hill. If Angela Hill just stays on the outside, uses her length to pick Lookboonmee apart, she's going to win easily. But if she starts mixing it up in the clinch and stuff, she can get herself into trouble, especially with how bad MMA judges can be. So with that being said, boys, enough of the rabbiting about that fight. Let's get into the next one, which is going to be Kai Kara-France against Tyson Nam. So throughout this breakdown, I want to leave this video running in the background to Tyson Nam, who is the gentleman in the white shorts, to kind of give you guys an idea of why I do think out of everyone that I've researched so far this week, this is Kara-France is probably the safest bet on this card. Unfortunately, if we just hit pause here, his odds do reflect that because Kara-France is also one of the biggest favourites on this week's card. Now, straight away, if we look at the odds on Tyson Nam, I would say at 3.20, which is plus 220 for an implied probability of 31%. To get any value here, you'd really have to cap Nam at around 40%, and I can't get there based on all the things that I'm about to share with you. If we look at the odds on Kai Kara-France, currently a 1.38 favourite, which is minus 263 for an implied probability of 72%. Again, it's a big price to pay It is a very big price to pay. You'd have to be capping Kara-France at about 75% to get any value here. With that being said, I do think he is one of the safest bets on the card for the reasons that I will now go into. So if you just take a look at this fight while I'm kind of, you know, breaking this one down, keep an eye on Tyson Nam, because if you go and watch any of Tyson Nam's past fights, you'll see that he is pretty one-dimensional. And at the age of 36, bam, 36 years old, it is very unlikely that at this stage of his career he would start to make big improvements. So the version that we've been seeing of Tyson Nam over the last few years is fair to say is probably very similar to the version of Tyson Nam we're going to get this weekend. Maybe he'll improve, maybe he'll show some new tricks, maybe he'll mix things up a little bit more than he has in the past. But for the most part, I wouldn't expect him to look that different on Saturday from what you are seeing in this video here. And that makes this a very good stylistic matchup for Kara-France, because Tyson Nam throws a real low volume of strikes per round. He headhunts. He's got major power. He does hit very, very hard. But because he knows that, he isn't interested in outstriking you. He isn't interested in volume. He's just looking to load up on this right hand, catch you with a bomb, and knock you out. Now, this fight is going to be at flyweight, and there are very, very few guys in the flyweight division that carry legit one-shot KO power. I think that's why Tyson Nam is going to struggle. He does have above average power for the division, but in terms of technique, not too dangerous. Now, Kara-France has got an amazing chin. If we just pause this here, look at Kara-France's record. He's had 28 pro fights, and if you check back through his record, in 28 pro fights, he has only ever been KO'd one time. Literally one time in 28 pro fights. Now, obviously, it only takes one punch, and anything can happen. You know, Tim Means last weekend had only been KO'd one time in 40 pro fights. It can happen, man. Maybe Kara-France eats a death shot this weekend. But the point I'm trying to make is, just like with Tim Means last week, it is highly improbable that Kara-France actually gets knocked out this weekend. And to be fair, a flash KO is Tyson Nam's only path to victory, because as you see him here, you've been watching him for 2 minutes now. Doesn't really throw much, doesn't really land much. Very, very low volume striker. And quite a predictable style as well. He likes to come forward, walk his opponent down, and just really look to land that right-hand bomb. We know Kara-France is very tough. We know he throws a very diverse range of strikes. We know he's very technical, trains at City Kickboxing. He's young, he's making big improvements. And again, he is the kind of guy that you have to practically kill in order to beat. So a big KO, it is a lot less likely, especially in the flyweight division. So this is a very good stylistic matchup for Kara-France. What you have to ask yourself if you're betting this fight this weekend is, do you want to pay a big price and bet a big favourite like Kara-France against the guy that does have legitimate power in his hands? It's for you to weigh up. But what I would say is, Nam isn't crazy dangerous, and Kara-France has never, well, he's been KO'd one time in 28 pro fights, so he's tough as fuck. What I would say, the perfect quote which kind of sums this fight up, is when you try to win a fight by knockout, you often end up losing a decision. And that is exactly how I would sum Tyson Nam up. Very passive, just doesn't let his hands go. And if he doesn't land the kill shot to knock you out, he's basically 9 times out of 10 going to lose a decision. So that is that one, boys. And this fight's obviously on YouTube. Check it out. You'll see what I mean. Very, very passive. And you can make your own decision up, right? Okay, on to the next fight, which is probably one of the most interesting fights on the card from a betting perspective. It is going to be Kevin Aguilar against Tukhugov. It is Khabib's bestie, and I'm guessing we won't have to scroll too far down to see him hanging out with his mate. Oh, here he is with Makhachev. Where is he with Khabib? Of course, Tukhugov infamously attacked Conor McGregor in the octagon after the fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Here he is with his homie Khabib. And I'm just going to grab a quick drink of water, boys. Just give me 2 secs. Very sorry. Very unprofessional of me. But anyway, let's get into this fight, which is going to be one of the most interesting fights from a betting perspective on this card. So, haven't made my mind up whether I'm going to be betting this fight yet, but I will say I heavily lean towards Tukhugov. But there's issues here, boys. There are definitely issues. I don't know if I'm going to be betting this fight. I would say if you are interested in betting this fight between Tukhugov and Aguilar, listen to what I've got to say here and then go research this one yourself and make your own mind up. Better still, I've done a 2-hour fucking video on it in the live stream section of my website, right? I would say if you are really thinking about betting this fight, just have a fucking butchers at what I said in this 2-hour live stream and make your own mind up. Because I'm very much on the fence about this one and not sure what I'm going to do yet. I'm still waiting to see how the odds move and stuff. It's a complex fight. This is probably the most complex fight on the entire card. So, where do I even begin? Where do I even begin, boys? So, standing up, Aguilar will have the advantage. He's quite a good boxer. Tukhugov's style of striking involves being all the way out of his opponent's range where they can't land on him, or all the way in where he's kind of like blitzing them with funky strikes and spinning attacks. Aguilar has got pretty bad striking defense. He's very easy to hit, but he's got a beard on him, man. He could take it. He is a tough motherfucker. He's got a great chin. But in terms of striking at face value, Aguilar's got the advantage. He's a much better boxer than Tukhugov. But Tukhugov's style is tricky because he won't just stand in front of guys. He's always kind of like bouncing around on the outside, coming forward with that crazy flim-flam that cause people problems, right? Now, one tricky aspect of this fight from a striking point of view is that even though Aguilar is the better striker, Tukhugov can pose him problems because Tukhugov has got that blitzing style where he likes to come in throwing crazy, flashy, unorthodox spinning techniques, and Aguilar does have a habit of getting caught cold. His striker defense isn't the greatest, so there is a possibility Tukhugov can hurt this guy bad, stand him, wobble him, drop him, knock him out. We saw Ige drop him, right, in his last fight. Now, the problem with this fight from a betting point of view is that Aguilar is one of these guys that has pretty good initial takedown defense, but only pretty good. It's not bulletproof. Aguilar then is one of these guys that is really, 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 really weak off their back. Like, horrendously weak off their back. If you had Kevin Aguilar as a video game character, like, you know, FIFA players or like fighters in the UFC game, if you had like Kevin Aguilar with his list of stats and like the stats were scored out of 99, you'd have like Kevin Aguilar's striking would be like an 80. Kevin Aguilar's takedown defense would be like a 70. Kevin Aguilar off his back would literally be like a 10. So weak off his back, it is outrageous. And you know me, boys, I don't talk shit. I just bring you the facts. I just give it to you all real, boys, and you could take it or leave it if you wanna go with my advice or not. I just give you the facts. So rather than just say this, because I know a lot of people are high on Aguilar this week, I've got a little clip to show you exactly what I am talking about. So if we just scroll through here, this is Aguilar's fight against Damon Jackson. And this fight pretty much perfectly illustrates the weakness in Aguilar that I am talking about. So if we look at this little sequence here, we see Damon Jackson shoots a nice deep double leg takedown, puts Aguilar on his back. Now in this position, Aguilar isn't in that much trouble. Aguilar's actually in a strong position to work his way back up to his feet. All he has to do is slip his feet out here, start to turn one way or the other. Probably to his right is going to be easiest because this pillar is going to make life difficult for him if he starts to turn to his left. But turn to his right, not expose his back to Damon Jackson. And with 4 minutes and 15 seconds left to go in the round, slowly get to his knees and use the cage to wall walk and edge back up to his feet. Instead, look at what happens here. What he actually allows Damon Jackson to do is drag him away from the cage. So see, he's doing the correct thing here. He's trying to clear his legs. He's trying to push down on the head of Damon Jackson. But in this sequence, watch, Damon Jackson goes to wrist control here. And any second now, you're going to see it. you're going to see it from Damon Jackson here. Instead of Aguilar trying to keep his back tight to this cage and clear his legs, he actually allows Damon Jackson to pull him further away from the cage and flatten his shoulders out against the canvas. That never would have happened if Aguilar would have just kept his back tight to the cage. Damon Jackson wouldn't have been able to get this position. And then you see Kevin Aguilar looking incredibly weak off his back. Again, instead of trying to get his back over to the cage, tight to the cage where he could try and use the cage to wall walk or pop back up to his feet, he just goes to close guard and accepts being on the bottom. And that is literally the story with Kevin Aguilar in all his fights. And some people watching this will be like, oh yeah, but you know what I mean, his takedown offense looked good against Barzola and Ige. Did it though? That's what I would say. If you go back and watch the fights against Ige and Barzola, what you'll notice is the majority of Ige and Barzola's takedown attempts come above the hip height, and they're single shot entries. So either single leg shots or double leg shots. And as soon as Aguilar would stuff the initial attempt, Barzola and Ige would retreat, reset, go back to the middle of the cage. We already said earlier on in the breakdown, Aguilar has got pretty good initial takedown defense. We give him a 70, right, in the UFC video game. But if you actually start to chain into different techniques, you move from the single leg to the double leg to the body lock, and you actually get this guy down, he is very, very, very weak off his back. Very weak. And what I will say is Tukhugov is an elite chain wrestler, which you would expect, man. I mean, this guy trains with Khabib Nurmagomedov, one of the best chain wrestlers in the game. Tukhugov's chain wrestling is amazing. So to the naked eye, someone might watch these fights and think, oh, you know what? Aguilar did a pretty good job of keeping the fight standing against Barzola. Barzola's a strong wrestler, therefore Aguilar can do the same against Tukhugov. Incorrect, because Tukhugov's style of offensive wrestling is completely different to Barzola's, and Aguilar's takedown defense is very well designed to deal with the kind of takedown entry Barzola's going to throw at you, but the kind of takedown Tukhugov is going to throw at you, whole different fucking ball game. Different ball game. Tukhugov's chain wrestling is next level gangster shit. Dagestani gangster shit. Very, very good chain wrestling. So at this point, you're probably thinking like, well, Allsop, what the fuck is the problem then? Because Tukhugov's even money, and you're basically saying to us, like, fucking Aguilar's terrible off our back. Why aren't we going and betting Tukhugov already, my guy? What the fuck's going on? Well, let me tell you, boys, because MMA is a complex sport, right? It always gets deeper. The problem with Tukhugov is that he does slow down as the fight goes on. But at this stage, I'm not sure how much it matters. That's what I'm trying to weigh up. Trying to look at the weigh-ins. Trying to just assess how the odds move in the run-up to the fight before I make my decision. But what I would say is, we've only seen him fight one time since USADA... Sorry, that's not true. Seen him fight 2 times since USADA came into effect, right? USADA came into effect in January 2016. So we've seen him fight twice since then. He did slow down in his fight against Renato Moicano. But what I will say is that even deep into the 3rd round against Moicano, his chain wrestling looked very good. Tukhugov looked so gassed in round 3, but somehow against Moicano in round 3, he was still able to hit deep, nasty, technical, crazy takedowns where he was chaining into all different kinds of techniques. But because Renato Moicano is fucking Renato Moicano and he's very, very good, he was able to shut it down or pop back up to his feet when he did get taken down. Aguilar ain't Renato Moicano. And in then the fight we saw, his last fight against Lerone Murphy from UFC 242, again, he slowed down, but there are layers to this that we need to unravel. The whole fucking shebang about being a professional gambler and making money from gambling is all about not being results orientated, not thinking, oh my god, Tukhugov fucking struggled against the guy that he fought, taking it on like a week's notice, like he's a fucking bum, he's overrated. It's about looking at the bigger picture. Do not be results orientated. Pay attention to what is actually going on here. There are things going on in this fight which are explanations to why Tukhugov might have gassed, and the explanations that suggest he might not gas against Aguilar. So the first thing, and the first most obvious thing, is obviously this fight took place at UFC 242 out in Abu Dhabi in Dubai, the desert air. If you've ever been to Dubai or that part of the world, you will know that the air over there is crazy as fuck. It is a different thing. And lots of fighters competing on this card slowed down. We'd never seen slow down before. So the desert air might have been one of the reasons why Tukhugov slowed down. Another reason is because this was his first fight back in 3 fucking years. That is a long time. Octagon jitters, ring rust, the whole shebang. Maybe Tukhugov was just a little bit rusty and that's why he slowed down. The third reason, he almost knocked Lerone Murphy out in round 1. He knocked him down, exerted tons of energy going for the kill. So in his first fight back after 3 years, maybe this guy got overly aggressive, committed tons of energy to the finish in round 1, and then as a result of that, kind of gassed in round 2 and 3 because he didn't get a finish in round 1. There's that crazy stat that if a guy knocks a fighter down in round 1 and doesn't get a finish, they actually go on to lose 67% of the time. It's a crazy stat from Fightnomics. So that is another reason why Tukhugov might have struggled. And on top of all that, but wait, there's more. That's right, bitches. Wait, there's more. Tukhugov also was suffering with a staph infection for his fight for UFC 242. So the American Kickboxing Academy, the AKA head coach, Javier Mendez, came out and said that Tukhugov was battling a staph infection and was on antibiotics for his fight against Lerone Murphy, and that is why he gassed. Now, if you have followed this sport for a long time, you will know that Javier Mendez is not the kind of guy to make shit up. He seems like a pretty humble, chilled, nice dude, man, and I can't imagine that he would just make this up as an excuse. Unfortunately, this video has been removed. There was an interview with Javier Mendez, but if you search on the interwebs, you can find a few different discussions on forums and stuff referencing it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, this fight is a tricky one where I definitely lean heavily towards Tukhugov, because it is a good stylistic matchup for him in the sense that he is heavy on the ground, nightmare chain wrestler, and we know Aguilar's incredibly weak off his back. But the risk comes in where we've only seen him fight twice since USADA came into effect. He did slow down in both fights, and what I am worried about here is if Kevin Aguilar does make him work very, very hard for takedowns early in the fight, we could see Tukhugov gas barred in rounds 2 and 3, and then, you know, lose a close decision. That's what I would be worried about here, because like I say, don't want to take anything away from Aguilar. He's got great initial takedown defense. It's just on his weak. If you do get on his back, if you do get him down, very, 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 very weak. Like D- weak. It's his biggest weakness, and it was present in the Dan Ige fight, right? One of the reasons why Ige was able to win a decision is because he was able to get a lot of top control on Aguilar. And I will tell you this right now, Tukhugov's top game and chain wrestling is in a different league to Dan Ige's. It is very, very, very good. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be betting Tukhugov this weekend. I definitely lean towards him. Go do your own research. Look into it yourself. I've got a 2-hour deep dive on my website. If you're really interested in betting this fight, I recommend checking it out. But yeah, have a butchers yourself, boys. Take a look at these fights and let me know in the comments below what you think, boys. If you're betting Tukhugov, if you're betting Aguilar, kind of hoping the odds continue to improve on Tukhugov and he gets into plus money, and then it will be very, very difficult for me to pass on him. But having said all that, it is a very risky bet. It's a risky bet on both guys because there is no doubt that Tukhugov does slow down, and I just don't like betting dudes with questionable cardio. It's just a little bit of a rule I've got. So anyway, boys, on to the next fight, which is going to be Brad Riddell against Magomed Mustafaev. So initially, like many of you watching this, I thought that Mustafaev would be an amazing bet, because from memory, I thought, I mean, you should never judge a book by his cover, but from his appearance, I thought this guy would be one of these Dagestani monsters with a Sambo background who could hang standing and was a very, very strong grappler, and I thought he'd be able to drag Riddell to the ground, cause him all kinds of problems. When I actually went back and watched Mustafaev's past fights, it was actually shocking to me that this guy turned out to be a striker, and his grappling is actually a big weakness of his. Now, I'm not saying that he'll even matter here, because Riddell's not going to be able to exploit that, because Riddell is just primarily a kickboxer. But that does make this fight interesting, because both of these guys are strikers, which I didn't expect. I don't actually think Mustafaev can cause Riddell that much of a problem on the ground. But what we will do, we'll just leave this fight running in the background of Brad Riddell and Shem Murdoch. So you can kind of see a little bit of what Brad Riddell brings to the table. He is in the red gloves. So this is a tough fight for betting, because with both guys being strikers and with there being a limited amount of footage available on Riddell, very, very difficult to call which way this is going to go. If we take a look at the odds at the moment, oh my god, best fight odds is dead. Oh, don't go down during my video. No. Alright boys, there's always a plan B. There's always a plan B. We'll just use odds checker for today. Where are you, odds checker? Here we go. We'll just use odds checker. It's no bueno. Right, where are we? Brad Riddell, Mustafaev. Do we not have that fight? What the fuck's going on here, boys? Alright, here we go. So if you look at the odds at the moment, we've got Mustafaev at around about an average of 1.73, which is minus 137 for an implied probability of 58%. And if we have a look at Brad Riddell, 2.10, which is plus 110 for an implied probability of 48%. So the bookie's favouring Mustafaev here. And in order to get any value on Mustafaev, you've got to give him a better than 60% chance of winning. In order to get any value on Riddell, you've got to give him a better than 50% chance of winning. And this is a very, very tough fight for me to call. Like I say, there's not a ton of footage available on Riddell. If we look at his record, really not that much to go on. A bunch of early finishes, a weird fight against Vawatua where he actually grapple-fucked Vawatua, and then only really his UFC debut against Malaki to go on. Similar with Mustafaev, hasn't been that active. He's only fought one time in the last 3 years. That fight lasted only 1 minute and 26 seconds. We don't really know what version of Mustafaev we're getting this weekend. And there's me saying I don't think Mustafaev's going to be able to use grappling to give, you know, Riddell a problem. But who knows, man? Who knows what kind of grappling he's developed in this 3-year gap? We really don't know what we're getting from both guys. But with both guys roughly being around even money, it does make this a very, very difficult fight to predict, because both guys are incredibly weakness. Both guys are incredibly reckless. They do not mind betting on their chin. Both these guys more than happy to stand in front of each other and exchange bombs, and they both carry major power. We saw this in Brad Riddell's UFC debut against Jamie Malaki, where he was cruising, he was easily keeping the fight standing, he was picking Malaki apart, but for whatever reason, deep into the fight, he just chose to stand in a phone booth with Malaki and just exchange bombs. Hands down at this level, chin up high and exposed, and Malaki actually caught him with a huge right hook that wobbled Riddell. He was very, very badly hurt. Now, this was Jamie Malaki, a grappler without that much power in his hands, was getting pretty tired. It was his UFC debut. If Riddell plays those games and gambles on his chin like that against Mustafaev, he could get himself in a lot of trouble, because Mustafaev is obviously a hell of a lot more dangerous than Jamie Malaki. But the problem is, Mustafaev is also reckless, and Riddell's power needs to be respected. Riddell also hits like a truck. Now, based on past performances, if you're asking me to give you some advice on who I think has the advantage standing, I would say Mustafaev, but it's difficult to feel confident in that opinion because, like I say, there's not that much footage on Riddell. What I would say is that Mustafaev looks to be much better at fighting from range. So Mustafaev fights much longer, flashy kicks, throws longer punches. He can land on Riddell from positions where Riddell might not be able to counter, because everything Riddell does is really tight. It's in a phone booth. When you go back and watch Riddell's fight against Jamie Malaki, all his punches are very short. They're in this range, whereas Mustafaev can just throw longer. And that's interesting, because if Mustafaev can avoid fighting Riddell in a phone booth, he might do pretty well. Now, of course, the problem with trying to predict what will happen in this matchup is that Brad Riddell is the striking coach at City Kickboxing. I believe I've seen him in the corner of Volkanovski and Israel Adesanya in the past, and he's very good. He's going to be making big improvements from fight to fight. He's going to be tightening up weaknesses, and he's going to come in with a game plan to counteract Mustafaev's flashy style. So who knows, man? Maybe Riddell has looked, you know, compact and tight in the past, but with his high-level kickboxing pedigree, maybe he'll be able to show a different side of him against Mustafaev, a side that will cause Mustafaev a problem. So an impossibly difficult fight for betting this one, and I would definitely pass on this fight, boys. I just think it's a total crapshoot. You don't really know what you're going to get from either guy. If you really have to bet this fight, I would say take Mustafaev, just because he can fight long. And if you see like Riddell here, where he's kind of like flat-footed, stood right in front of his opponent, what I notice about Riddell is he does rely on people standing in front of him in order to land. And Mustafaev won't really play that game. You know, he's more of an in-and-out fighter, all the way outside the range or all the way in. But with Riddell's striking pedigree being so high, I wouldn't bank on... I just wouldn't bank on him not having a solution to Mustafaev's style because of his experience. So anyway, boys, with that being said, let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be Karolina Kowalkiewicz against Yaonan Yan. Two very, very tricky names to pronounce, mate, especially for my crazy Welsh accent. So we'll just call them Karolina and Yan, just to keep this one simple. So Karolina was actually one of the first names that jumped out at me as a potential bet this weekend, because if we look at the odds, we can see that she's currently a very, very big a very big underdog against Yan, and that always gets my spidey senses tingling. Because you guys know me, I always say the win-loss records don't matter, but whenever I see an inexperienced fighter like Yan, who hasn't really fought the highest level of opponent, against, you know, an experienced veteran, it wasn't that long ago that Karolina was fighting for the title. When I see an inexperienced fighter like this as a huge favourite over someone like Kowalkiewicz, immediately I think those odds might be off, and I think, you know what, we might have some value here. So this was one of the most interesting fights on this card for betting, because the same applies to what I said about Angela Hill earlier on in the video. Female fighters tend to be more inconsistent than male fighters, so it's very, very dangerous to bet female fighters as big favourites. So the same things I said about Angela Hill also apply to Yaonan Yan. And when I researched this fight, gotta be honest, man, I just was a little bit disappointed in Karolina. I really, really was. My hazy memories of Karolina was that she was able to come forward with relentless pressure, throw a high volume of strikes, get in her opponent's face and make it ugly. And I actually, as part of my research process, started watching Yaonan Yan first before I watched Karolina. And when I watched Yan, I was like, oh shit, like this is a good matchup for Karolina. Like, based on my memories of Karolina, this is a great fight, because what you'll see from Yan is she's got quite a predictable style of fighting. She stays flat-footed and she's very strong, very powerful. You look at her, she's very physically imposing, very muscular, and she hits very hard. What you'll see about Yan is she will wait like a praying mantis, man. She'll just fucking stand there with the right hand cocked, and as soon as her opponent comes into boxing range, she will throw off a very hard, very crisp, beautifully timed right hand. And you think, in fact, me, that technique's pretty good. But then as soon as that right hand is gone, if her opponent keeps coming forward, then she just goes to rock'em sock'em robots mode, and she'll stand right in front of her opponent and just kind of like wing short shots. And what you'll notice about Yan is, aside from that first technical damaging right hook, when her opponents then get inside, Yan is quite ineffective. She doesn't do a particularly good job of landing, and she doesn't move her head much either. She's very, very hittable. Really, the strategy towards beating a fighter like Yan is getting through that initial right hook and then getting into a range where you can not expose a horrible word, but take advantage of her poor striking defense, inflict a little bit of damage, snap her head back her up, and rough her up, basically. And I was thinking, do you know what? That is exactly the style I remember Karolina having. But unfortunately, man, we do know that knockouts can have a real bad impact on a fighter. They can really affect their confidence. And I have noticed the shift in Karolina since her knockout loss to Jessica Andrade, because before that fight she had no problem in throwing herself into the fire, walking her opponent down, exchanging, getting into like a wild brawl. And that version of Karolina would do very well against Yan. But since the Andrade knockout, she's lacking confidence, she's a lot more gun-shy. So instead of being able to apply that relentless pressure, what you now see from Karolina is that she fights in bursts. So she'll come forward in three or four sprints per round, where she'll kind of like walk forward, like kind of pressuring you, but not really pressuring you, because she's not letting her hands go. And then she'll kind of like psych herself up, attack, and then retreat back into the same range where she's kind of just following you around the octagon. Now, the problem with that style is the old Karolina would come forward, let her hands go, And if you got the better of that exchange, she would still keep coming forward. And that would be a style that'd do pretty well against Jan, because Jan's striking defense isn't good and she slows down as the fight goes on. What you now see since the Andrade knockout is because Karolina's lacking confidence, she'll come forward, and as someone tags her with the initial power shot to try and back her up to stop her from coming forward, instead of her just biting down on her mouthpiece and coming forward, she actually has that doubt in her mind where she's like, oh fuck, like I can't keep coming forward in case I get knocked out, you know what I mean? And that has completely destroyed her fighting style. Now I hope she will get it back on track this weekend, man. I would love to see the old Karolina show up. It's possible, you never know, man. She could show up and perform like she used to in the past. If she does, it's a tough fight for Jan. But if the version of Karolina, the foot, Waterson and Grasso shows up, it is a good fight for Jan, because what will happen is when Karolina comes forward looking to pressure Jan, as soon as Jan lets that initial power right hand go, she is going to plant that seed of doubt in Karolina's head, and Karolina's going to stop coming forward. And if you can't keep pressuring someone like Jan, then you're not going to beat him. So this is a good stylistic matchup for Jan based on Karolina's last 2 fights. But if Karolina shows up looking like she did pre-Andrade, it becomes a much closer, much more competitive fight. And both these girls predominantly strikers, so I don't think it'll go to the ground. Maybe someone slips on a banana skin and they end up on the ground in a crazy scramble or exchange or something. But for the most part, 2 stand-up fighters, this should be a stand-up fight. So I'm hoping Karolina can get her career back on track this weekend. But if you were to bet her at these odds, you know, even at these odds, it would be a very, very speculative bet. This fight's an easy pass for me. There's no way I'd touch Jan at these odds. But I also don't see Karolina beating her if she fought like she did in her last 2. So it's an easy pass. Sorry to be boring. But the odds, you can see the bookies don't really want action on that fight with the way they set the odds. So now we go into the co-main event of the evening. We are going to be looking at Mikhail Lord Oleksiejczuk versus Jimmy Crute. And again, I will make this fight quick. This will probably be the quickest fight to break down on the entire card. This fight is very, very similar to the Mustafaev versus Riddell fight in the sense that there's not enough concrete footage on Crute to really form a strong opinion as to how this fight might play out. Because if you look at his record, a lot of his fights over the last few years have ended early in round 1. The fights that haven't ended in round 1 have been grappling fights, and that doesn't really tell us that much because Oleksiejczuk's primarily a striker, Crute's primarily a striker, and both boys are probably going to win this fight on the feet. So if we look at what we know about both guys at the moment, Crute is extremely powerful, devastating kicks, but just because of the stylistic opponents he's faced over the last few years, we don't really know a lot about his boxing. Oleksiejczuk is nowhere near as powerful as Crute, has much more of a traditional boxing style, but he's a southpaw and he's got very, very good boxing, very good combinations. Oleksiejczuk's a bit of a nightmare. He likes to walk his opponents down, put loads of pressure on them, and basically just look to beat the body up with nice boxing combinations and pick them apart. That's what makes this a difficult fight for betting, because we've never seen Crute fight a pressure fighter, so we don't know how he's going to deal with the forward pressure and boxing of Oleksiejczuk. On the flip side, this could be a horrible matchup for Oleksiejczuk because Oleksiejczuk's striking defense is very, very bad, and Crute's power in his kicks are devastating. So if Crute has got a similar level of power in his hands to his kicks, Oleksiejczuk is going to be wide open to the knockout because Oleksiejczuk is always coming forward, he's always pressuring, always looking to take his opponent out. And like they say, when you put yourself in a position to finish your opponent, you also, when you put yourself in a position where you're trying to finish your opponent, you also put yourself in a position to be finished. And that is the problem with Oleksiejczuk's style. He's quite hittable. So both these guys are pretty reckless. They both love to exchange. Crute carries major power, but I'm not sure how he's going to deal with the pressure fighting boxing style of Oleksiejczuk. I slightly lean towards Crute because I think that he can knock Oleksiejczuk out and win a decision, but it's inconclusive because gaps in information in watching the footage. So if we look at the odds on both guys, currently very, very close to even money. we have got, actually money's coming in on Oleksiejczuk by the look of it. So he's round about a 1.72 favourite, which is minus 139 for an implied probability of 58%. So to bet Oleksiejczuk here, you've got to give him a better than 60% chance of winning. And then to bet on Crute, he is 2.10, which is plus 110 for an implied probability of 48%. You'd want to be giving him a better than 50% chance of winning. This fight is just... it's one of those fights that could go either way, and when you see the odds on both guys so close to even money, it's very hard to find a strong position on a fight like this, because you can't feel confident in predicting it due to the massive gaps of information we have, just because there isn't footage available to tell us how Crute is going to deal with a boxer. There also isn't a great deal of footage available on, you know, both guys' ability to fight on the back foot, right? Because Oleksiejczuk is very used to being the hammer, not so good at being the nail. As soon as OSP took the fight to him in that second round of his last match, he kind of faded. So we don't know how Oleksiejczuk is going to do if he comes forward and Crute just won't back up and he's going to meet him in the middle and throw down. We don't quite know how Oleksiejczuk is going to react to that. Maybe Oleksiejczuk is only a pressure fighter and he thrives when he's allowed to work his opponent down, but when they flip the script, maybe he'll struggle bad. So that one is an easy pass for me, boys. Sorry to be boring, but hey, MMA is a complex sport, right? It's no surprise the bookies are going to cap the majority of these fights accurately, so that's why you have to try and wait for the strong positions to come to you, like Dvalishvili last week. Dvalishvili was a super strong position. He came through for us in a big way. Those are the kind of bets I'm on the hunt for. Stay patient. Wait for the strong positions to come to you. That's how you make good money long term. It's really as simple as that. It's a waiting game. It's a game of patience. With that being said, on a weekend full of combat sports, 3 Bellators, 1 big boxing fight, and an amazing card in Auckland for the UFC, we have a super exciting main event fight between Dan Hooker and Paul Felder, where a lot of people are interested in this fight because it's such a great fight. And I gotta be real with you boys, I talk a lot about fighting, right? I stream 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day on my website every single day. I do these long YouTube videos. I do long streams on Mixer and Twitch. I'm always talking about fighting. I'm always researching fighting. And for the most part, I feel like I know my shit. I feel like I know a hell of a lot about MMA. Of course, I've got my critics. You know, people say, if you don't want to face criticism, it's like my good mate Zip says, one of my elite members, if you don't want to face criticism, do nothing, be no one, and say nothing, right? So I'm always going to have critics, but I feel I know my shit when it comes to MMA. Pretty fucking shit hot at this whole MMA gambling thing. Every now and again, a fight will come up, like Dan Hooker against Paul Felder, where I literally have no idea what will happen. Like, straight up, hands up, I just don't know enough to be able to predict this fight. Based on what I do know about MMA and gambling, I would tell you, if anyone out there is leaning heavily one way or the other on this fight, I would tell you to run a mile from him, because it is such a complex fight. The reason why this is such a difficult fight to try and work out is simply because both guys have big weaknesses that the other guy has shown in the past that they could exploit. So on Saturday night, they both have very clear paths to victory, and it's really impossible to try and work out which guy is going to be able to expose their opponent's weakness better than vice versa, basically. What I'm trying to say is, Hooker has weaknesses that Felder can exploit. Felder has weaknesses Hooker can exploit. Who is going to do a better job of exploiting them? I just don't know, boys. All I can do is talk to you about what those weaknesses are, and then maybe you can make your own mind up and figure out who is more likely to go out there and be the better man on the night. Because if we talk about X factors, these boys are fucking equal. Like, if we look at the stare downs, you know, Paul Felder, 5'11" with a 70-inch reach. Dan Hooker, 6 foot tall with a 75-inch reach. And if we look at the stare downs, even though Hooker's got that 5-inch reach advantage, both guys roughly about the same size. Both guys look roughly around the same height. Hooker is long and tall, but not a massive size difference between these two. Now, what is interesting is Hooker does have that 5-inch reach advantage, but he's not that great at using it. Like, Hooker's style of striking is all kicks based. He isn't the best boxer, So even though a 5-inch reach advantage is substantial, and it will give him an advantage over Felder, it's not like a massive thing, just because boxing-wise, this guy's more of a kicker when it comes to strikes. So we're talking about both guys having weaknesses that the other guy could exploit. What are they? Okay, first and most obvious one, Hooker is a little bit slow, and he's incredibly vulnerable to leg kicks. Now, you guys are probably thinking, well, hang on a minute, that's a really unfair thing to say, because we've only seen Hooker really struggle with leg kicks against Edson Barboza, who just happens to be the greatest leg kicker in the history of MMA. But what's actually interesting is if you go back and watch Hooker's fight against Gilbert Burns, even though it only lasted 2.5 minutes, Gilbert Burns beat the lead leg of Hooker up very, very bad with leg kicks, to the point where he even buckled the lead leg of Hooker with leg kicks. I think in like the first minute or so, Burns already landed like 3 hard leg kicks, something like that. So what's interesting is that Barboza and his team must have then looked at that fight between Burns and Hooker, seen a weakness, and then went one step further and exploited that weakness and obviously put on a super dominant performance. So don't think the Hooker's susceptibility to leg kicks is just steeped in one bad night at the office against Barboza. It was actually present in the Gilbert Burns fight. And Gilbert Burns has essentially written the blueprint on how to beat Dan Hooker, which is ironic because he didn't beat Dan Hooker, but obviously Barboza has shown the blueprint on how to beat him. And we know Paul Felder has excellent leg kicks. Paul Felder's leg kicks are nasty, very fast, very technical. He digs the kick right into the calf. Nasty shit. Felder's got nasty leg kicks. So that's one huge path to victory for Paul Felder. Now, on one hand, you say that is a big weakness that the Felder could exploit. And on the other hand, you could be like, well, Hooker trains as city kickboxing. They've got a reputation with guys like Volkanovski and Adesanya for turning up, improving holes, and looking way better than they ever have done before, and having a game plan tailored to beating that specific opponent. You know, you think about Adesanya in his first fight in the UFC, his takedown defense looked terrible. He looked weak on the ground. Now his takedown defense is bulletproof, and he's basically impossible to hold down. You look at Volkanovski, he went from looking scrappy, sloppy, low level in striking against Darren Elkins and also Chad Mendes, to literally just outclassing Max Holloway in a stand-up fight for 25 minutes. So you know these city kickboxing guys have got to be respected, because they're always showing up with new skills we've never seen before. They're always tightening up these weaknesses and coming in with great game plans to exploit the weaknesses of their opponent, which is quite rare in MMA. It is very rare. Very small percentage of fighters actually come in with a game plan specifically tailored to exploit their opponent's weaknesses and stick to it. It is so rare. So that's why you really got to take these city kickboxing guys dead serious, because it's quite obvious what Dan Hooker's weakness is. He's very, very susceptible to the leg kicks. So you know the guys at city kickboxing are going to be working on a solution for that. But sometimes guys just have weaknesses that can't be fixed. Maybe that is a weakness the Hooker can't fix because he's too long, stands too heavy on his lead leg, and he's not fast enough. Maybe he just can't slip them. Maybe he just can't get out of the way. So that's something to think about. A second weakness with Hooker, which this is a strength and a weakness. The strength from Hooker is that he's incredibly disciplined and incredibly good at sticking to a game plan. So if you look at his performance against Al Iaquinta, it was so basic, and I mean that in the most complimentary way fucking possible. It was brilliantly basic, and it was something that, again, is so unique in MMA, where fighters go out with a specific game plan tailored towards causing their opponent a big problem, and they stick to it for 15 minutes and they deviate. Hooker's game plan against Iaquinta was magical, but the most surprising thing about it for me was how he was able to stick to it. If you go back and watch the Iaquinta fight, all he did was pump the jab and chop down the legs of Iaquinta. He literally threw two techniques in the whole fight. He pumped the jab, went to the leg kick. And every time Iaquinta came forward to attack Hooker, Hooker would just back up and circle away, reset in the middle of the octagon, get right back to that jab, right back to that leg kick. And it was a masterful performance, because Hooker just wouldn't stand in front of Iaquinta. We know the Hooker isn't a very good boxer, and he knows he isn't a very good boxer, but he knows Iaquinta has got decent boxing. So the one area of that fight in a stand-up fight that Iaquinta could have caused him a problem was boxing. So Hooker just didn't play that game. Jab, leg kicks, Iaquinta comes forward with his hands, Hooker's fucking gone. And that was masterful how he stuck to that game plan for 15 minutes and didn't deviate. No matter how aggressive Iaquinta got, no matter how much Iaquinta chased after him, Hooker would not plant his feet in exchange. He just circled away until Iaquinta stopped coming forward, then reset in the middle of the octagon and went back to work. So that was great. That was great. It was very, very good to see how disciplined Hooker was sticking to a game plan. But it's a strength and a weakness. Because when Iaquinta did actually commit hard to his strikes and come forward and through really long looping right hooks, he would land on Hooker. Like, if you go back and watch that fight, Iaquinta dinged Hooker a good number of times. He landed big hooks. The difference is, as he came forward and leapt forward that really long straight right hand, Hooker just kept backing up. So it didn't inflict massive damage on Hooker because Hooker was backing up. She's kind of like catching the punch on the tip of the knuckles of Iaquinta because he was backing up away from it. Didn't land with full power, and because he was circling away, it was difficult for Iaquinta to keep chasing him. So Iaquinta kind of had to give up. But the thing with this fight is, Felder's a wild man, and when Iaquinta was coming forward, similar to what we spoke about in the Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Yaonan Yan fight, Iaquinta became dissuaded from going after Hooker quite easily, and I'm not sure Felder will I don't want to use the word quick because it's a horrible word. I don't know if Felder will respect Hooker as much, I guess is the word I'm trying to say, because Hooker's boxing's not too dangerous. I'm feeling like if Felder comes forward and just puts loads of pressure on Hooker and doesn't let Hooker off the hook when Hooker's trying to circle away and reset in the centre of the octagon, I feel like Felder can have a lot of success because Hooker's definitely there to be hit, definitely susceptible to the leg kicks, and also if Felder does get to the leg kicks early and often, that will slow down Hooker's mobility, so it won't be easy for Hooker to keep circling away and stay out of boxing range, in a range where Felder can hurt him. But we've also spoken about Felder having weaknesses that Hooker can exploit. And when we talk about Felder's weaknesses, a lot of them are present in his fight against James Vick. Now, this was a fight that Felder won, but if you actually go back and watch the fight, it was a lot closer than you might remember. There were things that Vick done in this fight that Felder struggled with. Felder very, very much struggled with the length of Vick. Vick did a great job of fighting long, and Felder did struggle to get inside. What you'll notice about Felder is his style of striking is very, very similar to Brad Riddell's, where he throws lots of short, looping inside hooks. Felder wants to fight you in a phone booth. And the problem with that, when you're fighting these long guys like Dan Hooker and James Vick, is that they don't have to fight you in a phone booth to land. They can land on you from a position where you cannot counter. So Felder is the kind of guy that will get frustrated, and I feel like if Hooker is coming in super disciplined and he won't play Felder's game and he's just jab, leg kick, circle away, jab, leg kick, circle away, Felder's the kind of guy that is going to become frustrated, a little bit predictable, fall into Hooker's trap, fall into his pattern, and just end up like exactly like Iaquinta did, chasing Hooker around the octagon, fighting super tactically, goes to the leg kicks early, you know, really puts pressure on Hooker and fights his way into a phone booth and lets his hands go. I think Felder can have a lot of success, but they are two guys with big weaknesses that the other can exploit. I feel Felder might really struggle to get inside on Hooker, and I feel Hooker's disciplined ability to stick to a game plan could bother Felder a lot. But I also think that Hooker is incredibly susceptible to leg kicks, and his boxing isn't the best. So Felder's got past the victories as well. So I have no idea what will happen this weekend, boys. I have no strong lean. I'm kind of doing an experiment at the moment where I went back and historically calculated what my results would look like if over the last 3 years I bet on every single one of the fighters that I had picked. So every single main event fight, right, I pick a winner, right? I'll say that I think Dan Hooker will win or Felder will win. Well, I went back over the last 3 years and calculated how much I would have won or how much I would have lost if I would have bet on every single main event fight in the last 3 years. And it turns out I would have made like an extra 30 units of profit, something like that. But on this fight, I don't know what to tell you. In the background, I'm running an experiment this year where I'm tracking my profit or loss for betting every single main event fight, gun to head. Who would I bet gun to head in every single main event fight to see after 12 months how much I make or how much I lose? Because over the last 3 years, I would have done pretty fucking good. But this is one of those fights where I'm literally like, I just don't know who to go for. I have no idea. Literally, I have no idea. I'll probably go with Felder just because he's the underdog, but I'm not basing it on anything. Because again, we haven't spoken about the fact that Hooker's got home advantage on his side. He's from Auckland. It ain't going to be easy for Felder to go to Auckland and win a decision in Hooker's hometown. And on top of that, both these guys are tough as nails. They ain't going anywhere. They are so fucking tough. Felder fought with a collapsed lung against James Vick. He fought with a broken arm against Mike Perry. And Hooker, the amount of damage he took against Edson Barboza was just absolutely outrageous. So they're both tough as nails. They ain't going anywhere. It's probably going to go the distance. And it will be hard for Felder to win a decision here. So it's a tough one for me, boys. I don't know which way to go on this. Help me out in the comments below. Are you betting this fight? Let me know, boys. Leave a comment below. And also, if you think I've missed out anything, if you think that, you know, there are things that I should have spoken about that would make predicting this fight a little bit easier, let me fucking know in the comments. If I'm not doing my job, let me know. Does Hooker do something well that Felder might struggle with or I haven't mentioned, and vice versa? Let me know. I know a lot of people are interested in this fight. The odds have declined on Hooker, so some of you watching this must have bet Hooker out there. Let me know how you think this fight is going to go, boys, and yeah, drop your bets in the comments. But for now, that is going to be it, boys. I'm not sure if I'll be back this week. Like I say, I'm super busy. I am going to be live streaming on my website non-stop between now and the fights on Saturday, so you can catch me there if you want to. But also, remember, I do have something cheeky planned for the Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder fight, but I will only be able to do it if Bellator ends before the walkout for the Fury Wilder fight. So if Bellator is done, boys, before Fury Wilder, keep an eye on my Twitch, keep an eye on my Mixer, keep an eye on YouTube, because I am planning to do something pretty fucking cool. And if you want to see it, boys, hit that like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Take care. Have a fucking great weekend. Hope you crush it this weekend and make tons of money, boys. And I'll be back next week bringing you a boatload of content as always. Love you, boys. Good night. Take care.